Welcome back to the channel. We're in the garage working on the Sportster again. I'm continuing the work on my foot control conversion to move them back. If you haven't seen those videos, go back and check those out. Might make more sense. It's been a little while since I've been in the garage, so I've been researching parts and how I want to go about moving all of my linkages back. So I think I've got a good understanding of what I want to do. So in the previous video, like I said, I ended up designing this plate here. And I originally was going to use the stock pedal, and I created this bracket here that would kind of pivot and push that in. Well, with new parts, something popped up. So what I ordered here, these are the forward control mounts linkage and the rear shifter linkage off of a 2001 Sportster. So this is obviously the base that this will slide into, the mount for the actual pedal or the footrest. And originally I bought this because I was going to basically flip this around, or try to, and run the linkage forward to use as a rear control. Now put that aside. This is the original brake pedal. So you can see here the original brake pedal and how it matches up. The problem here is my actual pedal needs to be pushed in this way, forward, since I've switched this around 180 degrees. So obviously you can see the problem here that there's no mount on the top now. It's on the bottom. And that's where this bracket was going to work. And this is a pretty rough cut, but it did work until I got the new assembly. So now with the new pedal, you can see this is much more feasible, and I didn't have to create any custom brackets. Granted, I'll have to come up with some spacers, but that's easier and much cleaner than trying to create whatever this was. My only issue is I'll have to find a longer bolt here, which that won't be hard. I can come up with that. Now for the shifting side, you can see where my shifter is now. My plan is to flip this all the way up, and to match that, this will be mounted roughly somewhere about here. So what I've done here is I've flipped this completely upside down so that this hole is now on top. Granted, I'll probably shave the actual pedal down and drill it so that I can mount a proper shifter peg. But to mount all that to a new plate right here should be pretty feasible. And as for the linkage, it will connect to the front once that's adjusted, and it will come back. I'll probably add a slight bend to the shifter bar, but I think this will all match up pretty good. So as you can tell, I have a lot of trial and error to go, so let's get started. do this freehand, so excuse the shaky camera. I decided to go with actual 1-inch DOM round tubing, 120 wall. So it's just as thick as the square stock, but whenever my suspension compresses, it'll actually give me a little bit more room right here. Or actually, I should say rebounds to full length, which it'll never come near this. It doesn't actually articulate that far. So my plan here is to weld on 2 little connectors here. One here, and then there's another one back in there. This will all, might weld it on, might make it detachable like 2 pieces. That way it's easier to service. We'll see. I'll see how complicated I want to make it. But the shifter side will actually come out to about this far out, and then I'll create a plate here and then weld on some support brackets, and she should work pretty good. So The mount is plenty strong enough. It looks kind of low on this side, but it actually measures out to the same as the other side. I think it's just an illusion with the way the bike is leaning and all. I did make them lower, about as low as I could, just to be more comfortable. But I did learn that the shift linkage I made, I thought about this. I made the bend in it, and then I was thinking, I've never really seen a curved shift linkage. And now I know why, is because there's a lot of deflection and it doesn't actually have the leverage to shift. So now I have to figure out a whole nother way to make this shift. Yeah. So I'm going to think on that for a while. Okay. The shifting side has thrown me in a whole downward spiral, basically. This video is now going on probably close to 3 weeks of trying to figure out what's going to work. What I've come to the conclusion of is my original idea to have the brake lever as my shift lever won't work. Through basic principles of geometry, this lever should be proportionate to this lever. Otherwise you get a weird offset and it doesn't work correctly. Problem is none of these parts are steel and I can't weld onto them. I can try to bolt stuff onto them, tap things, and all of those become basically weak points, and I'm trying to minimize those weak points. So on another part, I was trying to figure out what the spline size was for the shifter. This has got to be one of the government's most biggest secrets, because God save me, I could never find out what that was. The best I could figure out, it was a 1/2 inch with a 23 spline, and the closest thing I could find was on eBay. That was a sleeve that was $280 something, and that's just ridiculous. I wanted to find a collar that was splined correctly for this, so I could just run MotoGP shifting, and then it would be what, 1 down or 4 down, 1 up. I was okay with that to an extent, and the more I thought about it, the more I wasn't really okay with it. I really didn't want that complication, even though it would be less moving parts and less problematic in breaking stuff or bending parts and stuff. So I do want to go back to my original plan of running a shift linkage over to the pedal, and talking to a couple people on Instagram. Thank you for reaching out. There's a couple of you that are building your own kits. You've been greatly motivational for me to see what you guys are coming up with. It is very cool to see how many different people can come up with how many different ways to do rear controls on Sportsters. So that's very cool, and I love talking to you guys about making different bits. As I'm doing my research, come to find out there's actually already 2 different companies that make rear controls on Sportsters. So the one company is called Chainsicle. Looks like a solid kit, a couple $100, done. No pain, no suffering, nothing. Kind of wish I saw it before I started all this. I probably would have bought his kit, to be completely honest. There's another company named Sato, which they want like $1,000 for a set, and I don't think I'd pay that, but it looks beautiful. I'm sure it's a fine piece of artwork. But right now, I've got about $100 in materials, which there's a big plate I'm not even using, so I've already bought too much. So if you would have count that down, or sized it down to a cheaper option, it probably maybe like half that, maybe like $50 in materials. Plus what I ended up buying the forward controls for just the shifter on the brake side, or the brake side now. That was $100 on eBay. Didn't even need to do that, honestly. So I've kind of wasted a little bit of money going through my trial and error and not realizing that there's already companies out here that make these parts, but they're just really hard to find, or I just didn't look good enough. So going down the rabbit hole further, one of the cool things is I didn't know on the first gen, I think it's the Buell X1 Cyclones, they run something called a boomerang, which is basically the shifter with a giant bar that comes up and then the linkage that goes across the top. And that's like dead on what we're trying to create, is they call it the boomerang. Problem is you can't find that anywhere. It's been out of production since like 2000, so good luck finding it. You can find Buell shift kits like that, and it looks like it all bolts on for this year. Again, still $300, so it's still money out. I'm still trying to do this somewhat on a budget, so my next best thing was to go out and I bought some basically generic collars, and this is the exact diameter I need. These are 7/8 on the inside, so there is a slight amount of play, but that's okay because I'm probably going to be putting grease or something on the inside of here. And then I'll probably weld these together. I'm going to weld and bend my own pedal that goes forward, and then I'm going to weld a bar that comes up here as well, and then I'll connect my linkage between those 2 points. These cost $10, so not too bad in the grand scheme of things. And this is maybe what, $7 in steel. And then I'm going to use probably the OEM shifter peg. I don't know, there was a lot of waste here, a lot of compromise, and it's been a lot of headaches. And honestly, if any of you are going down the same path I'm going with the rear controls, just look up this chain sickle guy. His kits look really well put together, and I kind of really wish I found them before I started all this. So with all that said, and all the belly aching out, let's get to building this piece. finally have a solution to this otherwise very strenuous process for me. Yeah, I'm glad it finally works. I mean, I kind of copied the design of the boomerang. You can see where it kind of gets its name. See if it works, and I'll let everybody know if it does work. In principle, it should work. I mean, I've just copied other designs and taken inspiration from manufacturers and what I've seen some other guys do. I think this is a much better design than what I came up with the first time, and I still am able to keep the 1 down, 4 up. So I've got some buttoning up to do. I want to tighten everything down, give it a nice little paint job, and yeah, I think this will work. So if you think I messed up or should do something different, let me know. I'm all ears, willing to learn. And if you've enjoyed this, let me know. In the next video, we finally get to start the header. Only 2 weeks later than what I really thought. Till next time, guys, take it easy. I'll see you in the next one.